record. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the using the job cost sheet. Okay, using the using the job cost sheets. So what is this? Okay, we use this sheet to record the cost of each specific job. Okay. Remember, the purpose of the cost accounting is about to measure, right, to record and to report, right? Remember in the very beginning? So we want to record the cost of each specific job using this cost sheet. And we want to know what's the total cost of a completed job and what's the unit cost, right? I know the total cost, I know the amount of units completed, and I simply calculate what's the cost per unit. And you're gonna have postings to the job sheet on every day, right? Every day you use materials, you have laborers working on it, right? So you're gonna keep track of the cost on a daily basis. And the total numbers must agree to the work in process inventory, right? The total numbers must agree to the work in process inventory, right? Because the cost numbers recorded on the job sheet, cost sheet, should also be posted to your work in process inventory. Okay, so here is one example of what it looked like for the job cost sheet. Okay, so you have a job number, obviously, right? So this is very important, right? You know that you know what job you are talking about. Okay, this is job, and the date, and direct materials, direct labor, manufacturing overhead, right? And here, the cost of completed job, you add them together, that's your total cost. And if you keep track of the quantity, right, what's the amount of the items? And then you divide the total by the quantity, that's your per unit cost, okay? That's your per unit cost. So for example, here would be another different of a slip. Okay, this is called a materials requisition slip. This is when you order the materials to be used for the work in process inventory. Okay, so in this case, you are saying, okay, we need 200. That's the quantity. Okay, of these materials. That's handles. Okay, and why do I need it? I need it for the job number 101. Okay, so for that job, I'm going to need 200 handles. So what did that cost me? Each one cost me $5. 200. That total cost will be 1,000. Okay, and the date of this requisition is January 6, 2022. The job order is 101. Right. So this one, okay, this one, you know, this is the requisition of the materials, right? I need that raw materials inventory to release to me 200 handles, okay, to the work in process, okay? Now you're gonna post that information to the job cost sheet, right? What's your job order? What's your job number? 101. And what is this? This is direct materials. So that's for $1,000. You're also going to write that number down here, right? $1,000. Okay, then for labor cost, right? For labor cost, so this is a time ticket, right? So the workers, okay, they will report their the amount of time they spend on the job, right? So on January 6, 2022, the same day, right? On the same day, this person called John Nash, he worked on the job number 101. He worked 4 hours, okay? 4 hours, starting time 8 o'clock, finish time 12 o'clock. That's 4 hours. And the hourly rate is $10. So therefore the cost is $40, okay? So now this one will be translated into the job cost sheet. Okay, so the 101, direct labor, $40 and $40, okay? And the next will be, I put a question mark. What about manufacturing overhead? So that's exactly, Lemmy was asking this question, right, previously. What about the manufacturing overhead? Lemmy, you have a question?
No, Professor. I guess I didn't drop my hand. I
Okay.
apologize.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so now the question is, so we have learned how to deal with direct materials and direct labor, right? So the next question is manufacturing overhead, okay? How are we gonna deal with that, manufacturing overhead? So this part is quite challenging, right? This part is quite challenging. The reason for that is, for example, the depreciation of the plant factory, right? The depreciation of the plant building, the depreciation of the machineries, right? Those kind of things. So these are manufacturing overhead, right? But it's calculated, they are fixed costs, right? It's calculated on an annual basis, right? So let's say the depreciation for the plant is $10,000 a year, right? How much are you going to assign that to this specific job, right? Or maybe you are renting a factory, you pay an annual rent of, let's say, $10,000, right? How much of that will be assigned to this job, right? And you every year you are doing lots of hundreds, thousands of jobs, right? Right? Isn't that a good question, right? So you see this part is trickier, right? So how are we going to deal with that? Right? So that's a question mark here. Okay. So how are we going to deal with that? We are dealing that with the predetermined overhead rate. Okay, something we call it predetermined overhead rate. Okay, so what is this calculation? How to calculate the predetermined overhead rate? So that's the estimated annual overhead costs divided by estimated annual operating activity, which is also called cost driver. So that is the predetermined overhead rate. So I'm going to say that again, okay? Estimated, again, this is not actual, right? It's not actual, it's estimated annual overhead cost, okay? Divided by estimated annual operating activities. Cost, this is a cost driver, okay? And that equals predetermined overhead rate. So what is operating activities? So this would be something like a direct labor cost, direct labor hours, machine hours, right? So for example, I'm expecting, okay, every year my company, okay, have 100,000 direct labor hours, okay? That is my estimated annual operating activity, okay? That will be 100,000 labor hours, or maybe 5,000 machine hours, right? So the company will pick one, the cost driver, okay? But the key here is they both estimated, right? The both is estimated are not the actual numbers. Do you know why? Do you know why this is not the actual numbers?
Because they haven't happened yet.
Very good, because it hasn't happened yet, right? If you want to do it accurately, you should wait until the very end, right, of the year, so you know what's the actual cost, what's the actual activity level. But the sacrifice, the cost is you are not able to assign the overhead on a timely basis, right? Right, these job orders cannot wait until the year end, right, to be assigned with overhead, right? So in order to assign the overhead on a timely basis, we have to have a predetermined. That's why it's called predetermined, right? Overhead rate. So you're based on your estimation. What is the total overhead cost would be, and what it would be my total annual operating activities, So then I will figure out a predetermined overhead rate. And based on that rate and my operating activity for that job, I can calculate what's my estimated overhead. Okay. So
I
here,
have one question.
yeah.
For the predetermined overhead cost, could we use the annual overhead costs and the annual operating activities of last year's?
Yeah, whatever. If you believe that last year's number is a good approximate for the this year's number, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So what would be the operating activity base? Like I
Professor,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. If last year the record is not available, then
If it's the first year, then you may probably want to consider maybe your peers, right? What about other business in the identical situation? So if you don't have your own number, right, you have to refer to the industry or to your peers, other companies, to see what. Yeah, it's estimation, right? Regardless, you maybe the first year will be really tough, right? But you have to figure out a way to estimate, right?
Photo of you and photos of your parents and why you think it'd be funny to like prank your parents, a little description about them. Email that to submissions@fullsend.com.
Are you asking a question? I don't think so, maybe not. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. So like I mentioned that the operating activity base may be direct labor cost, right? Direct labor hours, machine hours, okay? Or any other activity that is on an equitable base for applying overhead to jobs, okay? So I will give you one example. So here, okay, here is one example, okay? So ABC manufacturing company, okay? The direct labor cost is chosen activity base. So estimated annual cost, the manufacturing overhead cost is 200,000. Direct labor cost is 400,000. So what's my predetermined overhead rate? That will be 200,000 divided by 400,000. That equals 50%, okay? What does that mean? This means for every $1 in the direct labor cost, I'm going to incur 50 of $1, now 50% of $1, that's 50 cents in the manufacturing overhead, okay? So that's how I apply the overhead to the specific job, okay? So every dollar of direct labor cost, I am going to apply 50 cents to the overhead. Does that make sense?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you tell me, okay, using that example. So now you know the labor cost is 40. What that manufacturing overhead should be?
20.
20, right? 20. So how did you do it? $40, that's your direct labor cost. And
Yes.
then we figured out that predetermined rate is 50%. That's the $20, right? Did you see why you have to apply the manufacturing overhead until the end when the job is completed, right? Because you want to know what is my direct labor in total, right? Right? So,
Professor, I had a question, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to calculating the predetermined overhead rate, does the company decide on which of the operations activity to use, or is it always direct labor?
depending on, so basically, I want to see a correlation, right? I want to see a correlation between my activity and the manufacturing overhead. What is the main driver for the manufacturing overhead, right? Is the machine is the most relevant driver of that manufacturing overhead. For example, you have to apply a lot of the lubricant, right? And the depreciation of the machine, right? And so if those are the main manufacturing overhead, right? Then you know that the manufacturing overhead cost is related to the machinery, right? So therefore, it makes sense you use the cost driver as the machine hours, right? Okay. In another situation, if you consider that most of the manufacturing overhead cost is actually driven by the direct labor, right? All these costs incurred because of the human capital, right? The frontline workers. So therefore, it make more sense you use direct labor hours or direct labor cost, right? So the company will pick whatever they believe appropriate for the cost base. Yeah.
So in an exam situation, would you tell us what the cost activity is?
Yes. Yeah. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
The operations activity.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So in this case, now we know that the manufacturing overhead is 20, and now you see why this is always applied when the job is done, right? And
yes, it makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now the total would be 1060. Okay. And then suppose that the quantity is 10. So then 1060 divided by 10, your unit cost will be 106, right? Okay. Does this make sense? Do you guys have any question on this?
Sorry, Professor, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So in terms of this, could we apply this to building a house?
Yeah.
So then our quantity would be 1, and then we could still have this, but then our total cost is equal to our unit cost?
Yeah, in that case, you don't need to figure out the overhead rate, right? Because you only have one, you are only building one house, right? So all the cost, all the overhead are for this house, right? So
But then if it's like a company that builds multiple houses.
Oh yeah,
Wouldn't you
yeah,
still do? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
okay,
if
sorry.
that's the case, yeah, you still follow this approach. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so if you don't have any question on that, so I want to talk about this. So, you know, for a company at the beginning of the year, okay, they probably will use a single company-wide predetermined rate, or they may have different rate for each department, right? Really depending on the nature of that department. What is the driver, right? What is the cost driver for that department, okay? If they have a different cost driver, they are going to use a different rate, okay? So it doesn't have to be, you know, one rate for the entire company. It could be, but there are some also other options, right? Depending on each department, okay? And then you can see that you basically assign the overhead based on the actual activities, right? Based on the actual activities. So in my example, the actual direct labor cost for job 101 is $40, right? That's the actual times the 50%. That's my $20, right? Okay, so when you do the allocation assignment, you use the actual activity base times predetermined cost. Okay, so that's what I want to say. Okay, anybody have any questions so far?
Just real quick, what's the other stuff that was part of the operating activities? Labor hours, machinery hours, and what else?
It could be any activities, right? It could be any activities, you know, that is relevant. Like here, just give me 1 second. So any activities that is on it's an equitable base for applying overhead cost to the job. So if you know this activity is driving the cost and you are able to keep track of the level of the activity, right? You can estimate what's the total level for the year, okay, for this activity. And then you can keep track of the level of the activity for this job, right? Then you can use this activity as your cost base.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It could be anything, right? As long as you know the annual level, right? And you know that job specific level, right? So then you can apply, but you have to make sure this base has to be appropriate, right? There has to be a reasonable ground to believe that this is a reasonable cost base for the to drive that manufacturing overhead. Yeah.
So would like delivery of materials count?
Delivery?
Yeah.
Probably not, because this activity is probably a production activity.
Okay.
Because we are dealing with product cost, right? The activity has to be a production related activity. Like when you talk about the direct labor hours, direct material, direct labor cost, machine hours, this is all activities that are production activities. Yeah. Because right, manufacturing overhead is a product cost. It has to be driven by a product activity, right?
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, would an example be like the Lego and the cheese factory? We consider that for the Lego, it's more machine based. So machine hours is applicable there. And for the cheese, it's labor intensive. So labor hours is applicable there.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. That's a very good point, right? So I'm glad that you can tie this back to the previous videos we watched. Yeah, that's very good. I see 2 hands up. So who is, okay, Michaela?
Yeah, sorry. My laptop died for a little bit, so I missed out on one part. But so I had written down the predetermined overhead rate as the estimated annual overhead cost divided by the annual operating activity. But then I saw to solve for the manufacturing costs, we had multiplied those two together. Is that correct?
This formula is for you to determine what is the POR, right? What is the
Yep.
predetermined overhead rate? But then when you calculate what's the amount of overhead to be assigned for that specific job, you use the actual activity for that job multiplied by the POR. So this formula is for you to figure out what is
Okay,
the rate.
perfect. Thank you so much.
And this picture is to use it. How to use it? You multiply it by the activity base. Yeah. So the first one to figure out what the rate is. This picture is to help you to figure out what is the manufacturing overhead. Is that clear, Michaela? Nima, you have a question?
No, you just answered my question.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so what's the general entry? So that's the general entry. So you debit work in process inventory for $20. You credit manufacturing overhead for $20, right? That's the general entry. So now let's take a picture. Remember, so some students stumbled a little bit here in this picture. So now you see the full picture, right? So for the materials, raw materials direct go to working in progress. Indirect materials go to manufacturing overhead. Indirect labor go to manufacturing overhead. Direct labor go to working in progress, and or manufacturing overhead go to the working in progress. Is that clear now?
Yeah.
Are we clear with this?
A lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it as a big picture.
Yes.
So this is the full picture, right? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay. So I think we are about time. 3 minutes. Okay. I still have 3 minutes. Okay. Cost system. So basically, I want to talk about the two main costing system: actual versus normal. Okay. I only have 2 more slides. Okay. Cost versus actual versus normal. Okay. So basically, in terms of direct material, direct labor, no difference. Okay, that's good. Okay, so direct materials, direct labor is always the actual rate times the actual quantity, right? Under the different costing system. So there's no difference. But for the factory overhead, the actual costing system, you use the actual factory overtime times the actual quantity used of the activity base. Remember, I asked you this question, right? Why don't we wait until the end? We know the actual numbers. Well, you could under the actual costing system, but the problem is it's untimely, right? It's untimely, and it will be more accurate, right? Because you use the actual number, not the estimated number, you're going to be more accurate, but it's untimely. You have to wait until you know all these both actual numbers. For the normal costing system, okay, that's the one we just introduced. You use the predetermined factory overhead rate times the actual quantity used of the activity base. This one is less accurate, but it's more timely, okay? Do you want to work on this question? I think we have 1 more minute. Do you want to work on this question for real quick?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, you have
That's
1 minute.
good.
You have 1 minute to do this question. And tell me what's your answer, okay? I don't want to waste your time because you paid for it. You should get all your time.
Is it $9.60 per machine hour?
Okay, anybody else? Who is that, Jamie?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
Is it 9:41?
Okay, I heard 960, 941. Anyone
I think
else?
it's 9:41 because you have to use your actual machine hours, I thought.
You have to use your actual machine hours.
I think it's 9.6.
9.6.
I think 9.6 too.
9.6.
Who think,
Yeah, 9.6.
who think it's
I got
9.6?
9.6.
I think it's 9.6.
If you think it's 9.6, raise your hand. Give me a sum up. Okay. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, the answer is 9.6, right? You are using
estimated.
Both estimated, right?
Yes.
240 divided by 25. So that's 9.6. So good job, everyone. I think we are done. Yeah, we are done today. So have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I will connect with you back on Thursday. And tonight, I'm hoping to give you some questions to practice. Okay, and then that is going to help you to prepare for the assignment. Again, this is not a mandatory. Okay, you don't have to do it. You don't have to watch my video. You don't have to do a question, but it's going to be useful to you. Okay. Okay, so I see lots of hands up. If you don't have question, class is dismissed. I will see you on
Thank you,
Thursday.
Professor. Have a great evening.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
I had a quick question before we go. Do you want us to email us your